Can you see my screen?
Yes, again.
Okay, thank you, guys. Yeah, so we want to discuss on the how to do the affinity group in a different way. The reason is that we want to we have some application that is running on Kubernetes, and we would like to provision a share using this CSI plugin from Kubernetes. And so first you can see how is the current status, how it's handled currently. So you can create a share and specify the scheduler hint, uh, which is the shares that are already created, the share IDs. And this somehow wouldn't work very well for the CSI plugin. So for convenience, I put this uh, the YAML file, the resource, Kubernetes resource as example. So basically you define a storage class and then you define a PVC. So then uh, these are the Kubernetes trying to create provision these resources according to the definition. The problem here is that uh, well, with current API, we need to figure out the dependency. So the share created later need to know what is has been created in the same affinity group, and this is somehow a dynamical process. So it's quite hard. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. So you have to use another set of rules like a Helm chart or customize so on and so forth to grab the share ID and then dynamically do the templating and deploy again. So this is a very tedious, it's a long process. And so that's why we got come up with this idea that maybe we can provide a different way to define the affinity group. Uh, well, we can first create a affinity group beforehand, and then put some annotation in those PVC acclaim, PVC resource. Uh, so then basically it's a statical uh, templating. That would be easier for this use case. And I have been thinking, yeah, so far, any question about the use case?
I- Could you explain what you do dynamically? You're manipulating the share type, or is it the uh, I mean, how are you able to catch that request and change things?
It's difficult. It's not. I mean, how would I do? I mean, in theory, you can build another application that's watching those resources,
Mm,
and then you can, according to the PVC definition, and you can get the if the PVC is greater in Kubernetes, you can get them, and by the PVC name, you go to OpenStack Manila API and try to query what's the status of the Manila shares, and then you can get them. You can get the share ID,
mhm.
and then you can put them into the PVC resource definition, and then you can do it in theory.
Okay.
Is that clear, or I should?
No, I wasn't sure also if we support things like scheduler hints and so on in in PVC definitions, and how we're plumbing that in at all.
Um, well, it will be some, for example, some in the metadata we can add some annotations
Hmm.
like affinity rules, like in Manila schedule hint. Then we can put the field here to specify the share ID exactly like this. So
I see.
yeah.
Sorry, I hadn't tried it, so I was just curious how this works. But
Mhm.
thanks for bringing that up. Yep. Go ahead.
And then another way would be also we need to put some annotations in those definitions in this resource. And but instead of share IDs, we can put a group ID. So that would be which is created beforehand. Okay, then coming to the next question, how what's the possible way to do it? Basically, I have think of two different ways. One way is to use the share group functionalities, which is already available. For this, we will need to first create a group type, and then we here for the group type we can set some property like affinity equals to same host, and then we create this group with this group type, and in the end we create a share. So the share created with this group type, uh, the scheduler will somehow figure out, okay, this belongs to this group and this group type. It try to decide uh, like the affinity rules that the share should be scheduled in this way, not randomly, but they should respect these affinity rules that are defined in this group. But the problem is that yeah, it's the good thing is that it's available, so we don't need to change the API. But it's a bit tedious, so we need four steps. And the other way I was thinking is also going back to the schedule hint. So we need to first define a affinity policy. Uh, this snippet I borrowed from Nova. It's they do it like this way. Um, Here you define some name for the share group, and you also define what's the type of policy. This is the affinity policy on the same host. It could be also different host, uh, so on and so forth. Yeah. And then once you have the policy, then you can create a share uh, and specify the some schedule hint XYZ affinity group policy. Then yeah, the scheduler will pick it up and to decide which host it can provision the share. This is the API, and then we need to also think about how to implement the scheduling. This is definitely we need to. I think this is more the real work is going on. There are also different ways to do it. For one thing is that we can extend the scheduler. So the good thing is that if we run a single instance of a scheduler and there is only one thread in it, then the first come, first serve, and we don't need to implement any locking, any locks in memory or in database. So we have to, yeah, the share comes after, we have to wait for the first share to be available. By that time, it knows which host is the first share is located, and then the scheduler can decide accordingly where the the second share is provisioned. We might need to do some introduce some small changes, like the share is created, the second share is created by the API already. It's just it has to wait for the first share to be available. So we have to set some waiting status on the second share, and later we need to also the scheduler need to automatically pick it up, yeah, to retry the creation or retry the scheduling. This is one possible way. Um, the other way is that well, we can also handle the request directly in the API layer. Um, here somehow, because the API pods or instances are usually there are multiple instances, then we need a database lock. So we can't create two shares in parallel for the same affinity group. And uh, yeah, and if the share is when the share is created, then if the lock is applied, then we could return immediately a bad request 400 status. And then the good thing is that then we don't need to change implement too many things, too many logic in the scheduling in the scheduler. Then the client should do the retry. This was yeah, maybe it's simpler to implement also. Okay, that's yeah, that's my idea about this one. So any maybe you can yeah use this as a starting point to discuss.
Indeed. So currently you have, let's say the Manila API allows you the scheduler hints, right? And you have affinity hints and anti-affinity hints, and they currently take share IDs. But instead, you would like to use a policy that makes this more dynamic, such that the first share gets created, and now you know how to match the policy to the shares. Isn't that the gist of what you're trying to achieve?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay. And so where does share groups play into this in the sense? I mean, you're looking at it as an alternative, but the same thing is you were trying to build it on top of share groups.
Mhm. This is just a different way to achieve it. We can use a affinity policy, or we can also make use of the share group because it's available already.
Yeah.
And I think the share group can set some properties to it, and then it can also affect the schedule, how the schedule behaves.
It does. And so if I remember right, like I mean, when folks were discussing the affinity, anti-affinity a long time ago, when this was implemented with scheduler hints, I think we did discuss the aspect of having share groups as an alternative, because share groups give you affinity. So you create a group structure and then you start creating shares on top of it. But what they don't give you or can't give you is anti-affinity, uh, in the sense that if you have a share group, it just means that everything there is co-located. And so having a new share come in, which has an anti-affinity to that share group, but still is part of that share group, is feels like a little confusing as far as you know how that share group concept is built is concerned, right? Like technically, you can't have anti-affinity with share groups. It's not a group anymore.
Okay, I mean, yeah, thanks for the feedback. I didn't think about that. So, but they are logically a group, but they're just located on different hosts.
They
That's
are,
a
yes,
little
but
tricky.
I don't know how you would surface that to the end user. Like, they're all in a group, but they're actually on different places, and so some of them are anti-affinity as opposed to affinity. Um, yeah, and
Mhm.
and the other aspect is, I mean, we provide an upper level API to do the share group snapshots. And today that's easy for things because you call one backend driver. And so if you do have an anti-affinity, this could mean that your share group is splintered across multiple hosts. And that needs to change if in case we use share groups as the vehicle. Because then when
Yeah,
you take a
yeah.
snapshot, you're actually going to have to send that request to multiple drivers.
Yes, yes, that's true. Yeah. So, so you think? Do you think it's better to use the second approach?
I think so, but then basically you're trying to create a new concept of a policy, which is in terms of this thing, it's just a string. But I'm trying to think what other extensions you will have for this in the future, and if this should be more like the other grouping structures that we have in Manila itself. You have share groups, you have share types, um, and and so on. Like I was wondering, should these affinity policies also live in the database as a separate resource, such that the things that are based off of them are actually tying back to them in some way.
Mm. Um, it's not share type. Um,
Yeah, it's not a share type.
we still want to use the same share type for all those shares. It's just one additional properties that we want to apply to those specific use case.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I can see the limitation already that it can't be tied to a share type because you're going to have.
Yeah, and also
Share types.
share types also yeah, we don't create it very often. That's
Hmm.
yeah. So how where to store the policy? I would say it's better to store it in the database, definitely, but maybe in a different table. So that would be introducing a new concept,
Yeah,
or we can do like the scheduling uh, we did before that we stored it in the metadata, I think. Yeah.
we did. Yes,
Mm.
and the metadata is being manipulated each time a share is being created and deleted.
Yes. Yes. But then we would have two systems in the metadata. So one is the affinity rules with the share IDs, and then we would have this new new way, policy way. I don't know.
Yeah. And another aspect of this is we can evolve the share groups API. I mean, this is just the use case we had so far, and the only use case that we've built on top of share groups today is, I mean, it implies affinity, but it also has the added use case of taking snapshots. And the most useful ones over there would be a consistent group snapshot, that some backends do support today. And so it is possible for us to build on top of that and have this Nova kind of concept, right? Nova has server groups, and these server group policies have affinity, anti-affinity, soft anti-affinity, and so on. Um, it feels like something that we could dovetail into share groups, and it changes the way the users look at it. And if there are code changes that are necessary, it would be for the snapshot logic. So if you do have an anti-affinity group, sorry, policy within your share group, the share manager knows what to do, how to take a snapshot of these. We would send multiple requests to gather those snapshots and so on. And maybe we have UX built such that you can't have an anti-affinity group but also have a consistent group snapshot. That makes no sense. Um, so a consistent group snapshot can only be possible if you don't have any anti-affinity or soft anti-affinity rules in your share group type. Um, that would be a good evolution for this and a reuse of that same vehicle. So that way you can actually you know avoid problems like pre-creating certain things or depending on a group that doesn't exist in the database.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I like the idea that we use the share group and apply some restrictions to the certain property of the group. So,
Yeah.
like you said, if it's an anti-affinity group, then we don't allow uh, to apply this consistent group snapshot on it. So it's totally can be done, of course. But then it would be mean that a big change, right? We need also when we implement this, it's a bigger implementation, I think.
I think so. Although if you were to use the scheduler hints approach as well, I don't know how. How easy it would be to manipulate those affinity policy things. Because right now we have all that logic to there is the affinity anti-affinity filters. There is the only host filter. All of these work with share metadata, and we're like manipulating share metadata in the API and so on. So with these policy group names, I don't know how invasive that changes and if it can live alongside what we've already built.
Yeah. Honestly, I haven't thought too much about the implementation.
Yeah.
But maybe you can manipulate in API layer when you get the API, when you get the request, and then uh, you can do something there.
Yeah, I suppose we already have some. The database issues that you said. You had too many shares getting created in the first go, like burst scenario, and you have to coordinate that somehow. Otherwise, you don't know
Mhm.
where you're actually going to create your affinity group. Um, if you allowed all of them to come in at the same time. So I think we already have that problem with the with affinity of anti-affinity, but it's in a different layer. Like in the sense, if you create a bunch of them to be in the same affinity group, we manipulate the metadata on each of them, and that might I don't know how well that is working with scale.
Mm,
Same thing with deletions.
yeah, yeah.
Have you had any experience with that in your cloud? Like has there been a burst activity and with these scheduler hints?
We don't run into such cases.
Issues.
So
Okay.
we're not creating like crazy a lot of affiliate shares in the same time. But
Yeah.
for this use case, it will. So
Yeah, exactly.
like,
Because once you start introducing this as a group, I would think it's a much
yeah,
flexible aspect.
and yeah, for Kubernetes, it's yeah, you just uh, create this definition of the resources, and then usually it's a bunch of YAML files,
Yeah.
and submit it at the same time usually. So we can't really control the coordination from that.
Right. And in the GitHub PR that you're filing against the cloud provider OpenStack repo, you're making changes to both Cinder CSI and Manila CSI, correct? And so you have the same problem with Cinder as well?
I don't know actually. So that's my colleagues is doing that. Maybe for consistency, he's doing that. But
Mm,
our main use case is for Manila.
I see.
And maybe the PVC here can be also a Cinder store. Maybe that's why yeah he proposing that. But yeah, I'm not too yeah. I could ask why he's doing that. Yeah,
Mm.
and give feedback.
Makes sense. I think next steps is would be. I mean, you've already started thinking quite deep into this, but when you start, um, you know, prototyping this or adding a design around the API, how the API should look, it might become more clear as to what's a better approach. There are pros and cons of both approaches. But personally, I do think the concept of groups can be a little more generic, than we currently have, and we expected that to happen over time. But we just built snapshots. But I think Dell EMC was chasing replication groups at some point. It never landed, but I think there's an open PR for that. And they had a very similar concern that the replication groups could span multiple backends. And it was interesting, and it was not affinity anti-affinity. It just was the fact that they wanted to protect a bunch of shares that were living in different places with the same policies. So that was the idea, and it did occur that we can make groups a little more generic than is currently. It's a very artificial limitation that we have.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then I can think about this approach then
Yeah.
to how to extend it. Yeah. And also, I would like to. Yeah. I think the first step is too much. Maybe we can think of some way to simplify that. I don't know.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. The first step, you mean?
I mean, using this share group, I need a four step to create everything from scratch. So
You,
I need to first create a share group type,
uh-huh.
and then set the properties on this type, on this group type, and then I need to create the group, and in the end, I can create the share. So it's literally four step to
Yeah,
do this process.
that is true. But even with the affinity anti-affinity thing, you would need a policy to exist. Sorry, with,
Mhm.
with the scheduler hints approach.
Yeah,
So the
yeah,
policy would be something that, let's say, an administrator pre-creates.
that's true. Yeah, yeah. You definitely you need some extra steps. Yeah.
So yeah, that's another pro and con. So I would think, I guess we should probably add all of these into a place like a specification, so we can beat this down.
Mhm.
And I think the document you have is a great start. Is this something we can share?
Yeah, yeah. I can. Sorry about that. I didn't know the Etherpad can do that, but I can create a new Etherpad and copy
Yeah,
into
dump
it.
all of this into that. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, I will do that. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll shut up now. We might have other questions.
Okay, any other questions? All right. Awesome. Yes, it sounds like a good proposal, and I agree with uh, maybe putting this into a spec. And yeah, if you can please share the things you already have there, they are great. So please share them with us. We can link that in this Etherpad, and can also link that uh, in the summary of this PTG.
Yeah, I will. I try to get a spec from this.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Right. Anything else you'd like to add?
That's all from my side.
Great. Thank you very much. Uh, awesome. That was great. Think we have a couple of other topics. Share encryption. It might be. I don't know. Maybe a quick update. But yeah, Kiran, you're around.
With respect to share encryption, I think I haven't have any changes from what we have discussed in the previous PTG meeting. So there was a discussion of having some generic implementation, but the thing is that uh, we are still kind of waiting from the NetApp for the valid encryption support the way we wanted to implement. Uh, because of that, kind of this pull request don't have much traction. So basically, there are two pull requests. One is to add the share encryption type, which is somewhat similar to what Cinder does, and another one is to use the encryption key ID during the share creation. The second pull request was expected to add the either the generic driver implementation support or the NetApp driver implementation support, but still the things are not clear. Uh, that's the reason I haven't kind of worked on it. So at this stage, this topic doesn't have much update, I would say. Uh, I'm not sure how much time it will take to have the generic implementation, but this is something I'll I'll prefer to do later after the NetApp implementation based on the use case and the need.
Yes, and I think the past we've had the same concern, right? Like technically, if we have no implementation,
Yeah,
how do we
we
test
should have
this?
yeah, we should have at least one driver implementation. That's what I thought. Let's wait in the tab because then that would be bit easy to have the confirmation
Yeah.
on the implemented API and DB table and etc. etc. Uh, and then in future something like similar to like backup. Like 2 days ago we have different use case or something similar which can potentially do the changes for the generic implementation or some other driver implementation. But I'll prefer to go with the NetApp first, and that's the reason these pull requests are still kind of in a wait stage.
And what is the issue with the NetApp driver? Is there a missing API
API.
or? Oh, okay.
So they do allow the encryption, but it's the default enabled, and they don't support the API to provide your own encryption key ID. This is something is what we are expecting, and hopefully we'll have next release.
Okay, makes sense. I think we had a similar request for SFFS encryption, except we've not looked at it uh, as a feature, partly because there is no way to actually support this on the how do I say it? So I think it's at the operating system level. There were some open PRs for the Ceph client piece. I can throw in the PR over here, but folks were asking for it from the Manila CSI perspective. Um,
So that would be encryption independent of Manila then.
yes, in some way, but I wonder if there are ways to to plumb in encryption keys and so on from the Manila Barbican approach that you have, because that's how Cinder CSI's encrypted volumes works. So I'm wondering if there is a similar opportunity here with Manila shares, which means that we would be handing it off to the node controller, sorry, the node plugin for CFFS, but it's something that we can get and set with the Manila API. But at the same time, I haven't looked too deeply into this, so I don't know if that's even a possibility.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you can add a further reference. I'm not sure. Like, I'm not. Has anyone else the requirement of share encryption?
I suppose we don't have many driver authors over here, but it's a good question to put out in case there are other vendor driver maintainers that are looking to implement this.
At least the same metrics that we have for Cinder. Not sure.
Yeah, the same kind of approach, right? Yeah. Does Cinder also support the same? Can you specify an encryption key from the API?
No, Cinder doesn't support. I don't remember exactly, but the flow is basically creating the volume type with encryption information, and then it will get this encryption information to talk with the key manager and provide the key reference. So while the volume is being attached, this key reference is being passed to the Nova, and the Nova, I think with the help of OS brick, basically it fetches the key from the key manager with that reference and does the actual encryption as a part of attach API. There is this documentation page in the Cinder which has information of this workflow. Uh,
Thank you. I think if we are going to at least prioritize the generic driver implementation that uses Cinder, that at least will allow us to flush out the encryption specs API that you have. Um, that might help at least get the reviews going, because I know you've been at this code for a while. But I feel like we're just missing some way to test it. Otherwise, we would be getting at least this in piecemeal
yeah,
fashion.
yeah. I'm not sure about the generic driver implementation because it's not that straightforward the way Cinder does. Because Cinder has this synchronization with Nova, and they talk with each other to kind of bring the libvirt into the picture,
Hmm.
which helps to do the actual encryption using its API.
and
That is
and that
not
is
the case.
and that is fine, right? Like technically we don't care about how the encryption is done, or I mean, we care about the API, and passing all of the required fields to the to Cinder API, for instance, um, and to set the encryption up. So I suppose if we can get that back and forth validated, this might itself be a good amount of testing that we can commit to. Yeah, as opposed to, like, there are options where we can introduce this in another first party driver, let's say like LVM or something, where we would have to take care of all of the encryption itself. I wasn't hoping we'd do any of that. We're you know using generic driver, I'm hoping is easier to communicate to Cinder because it already has these concepts. Because even when we're writing API tests for this, we'll only be able to test the Manila API. This is backend encryption. There's nothing we can really do to see that a volume is encrypted or something. I don't know. I mean, is there like, can you like try to mount it somewhere and ensure that it is absolute garbage that you're reading, or that the volume is encrypted in some way? So it feels like we're not interested in testing how the encryption works, how good it is, what it does, etc. We're more just about the API and the UX.
So you mean to have some kind of dummy implementation in generic driver, or
No, a real implementation where you are passing the encryption specifications to Cinder from Manila that you have. I'm not sure how feasible that is. That this is somewhere like you're more familiar with it than I am. What are the things that Cinder needs for its encryption, and do we have all of that information from the Manila API? And ultimately, my aspect is that the file system that's getting exposed via Manila is actually encrypted. But I don't care to check the encryption of it.
see,
I want.
even in the Cinder comes picture only when you try to attach the volume. If you try to attach the volume, that means some Nova instance is up and running, and Cinder is trying to attach the volume that instance. Uh, so for us, it would be dependency on dependency on dependency, because if we are passing from Manila to Cinder, don't know what kind of situation that particular Cinder volume would be in. Do we have the corresponding Nova instance? I mean,
See, so can you guys hear me?
yes,
Yes.
Yeah, so it depends on how they mount, right? So because so since no one knows encryption key used to encrypt the Cinder volume, and while mounting, right? So Nova retrieving from Barbican thing, and it is using it for mounting. That's why if you try to mount outside the same volume, the Cinder volume, example ISKC volume, ISKC LAN, you try to mount outside, right? We don't have the Barbican key. That's why we can't do the mounting. So that access is there only for Cinder and Nova, and they can mount. They can do all the reading, writing. That happens only via the VM. So outside the VM, you can't see the data. So similarly in
right.
Manila, right? Yeah. So Manila also, like when we mount, maybe basically like when we do this, even I don't know how we mount in Manila seriously. And so maybe that is a portion, right, where we have to retrieve the key from Barbican and putting it here, right? And if you do that, so the mounting will happen only via this Nova VM. And but anybody else outside, they will not be able to read that. If example, you create an NFS share today, even created in Manila, and even I can mount outside. I can see whatever it is, right?
Yeah, right. From Manila, we mount from the
Hmm.
external. Doesn't come into the picture in this, or the Nova. I would say.
I think we
Kiran, your
broke.
voice broke up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so you were saying correctly that
Mm,
we mount the
mm.
Manila volume,
Yeah,
Manila shares outside, and it's not the
yeah.
way happen in case of Cinder and
Cinder,
Nova.
yes, yeah.
So if someone is mounting from the external
Mm.
word,
We can see that. Yeah.
how how we can make sure that they can mount to the encrypted share, perform read write, something like this.
Mm. So that encryption is possible in Cinder because it is a whole file system and a whole block. And yeah, maybe Gautam is telling like maybe NFS share. Uh, I don't know how we can. Not sure about that. Yeah.
So
Mm,
I might
mm,
have to do some research
mm.
here, but I will
Yeah,
post
yeah.
some stuff
Something. Yeah, yeah.
on the Etherpad itself.
Sure.
Were you thinking, Kiran, any other first-party driver? I probably led you towards the generic driver because we had the Cinder and Nova implementation that we could rely on. But if in case you were you know keen on trying something else, that's a possibility. I have not explored it.
No, for example, even if we create a share in the Manila, we have mounted that share on the Manila share server, I believe. Uh, so maybe we can we possibly use the share server to perform the internal encryption of the shares, something like this. I mean, I'm not sure
See,
why do we need to bring Cinder and Nova into the picture.
Only because it's a generic driver. That's why. That's why. If you're using any other driver, you wouldn't have this.
See, what I'm saying is that when you encryption, even in case of Cinder, the encryption comes into the picture only when you try to attach the volume and you attach the volume to the Nova. Now here, if you are implementing into the generic driver and we'll try to talk with the Cinder, how can we make sure that there exists a Nova VM and we are attaching to that Nova VM from Manila and all that?
So in case of DHS, it's true. We create that Nova VM. So in case you would you have the APIs to create the volume, you have the APIs to create the server as well. So if there are any parameters that need to be added to create these things, that can be done in the generic driver. And we use Nova's volume attach APIs themselves in the and so that invokes OS brick, and like you're saying, that's where the secret is read from Barbican, and that's how libvirt is told what the secret is, and hence the volume inside the mount is actually decrypted so that the data can be written and read.
Yeah.
I mean, this is possible, but it will need changes to that API layer. Uh, and all of that is inside the generic driver or alongside it.
Okay. Yeah,
And
but
add to
let's. Mhm.
you mentioned about encryption done by that share server, right? Maybe inside it means you're talking about the storage vendor doing that encryption, right? That's what you mean when you said the share server can take care of doing encryption. See,
Yeah, basically
maybe.
the
Mm. So we did the study in
uh,
detail actually because the customer G42, right? Maybe Gautam, so they wanted encryption very badly for the deployment. That the Dubai National Oil Company, right? Yeah. So there are two kinds of encryption. One is what we talk about now, like the Cinder, right? Like where that volume itself is encrypted and nobody can see except the VM. So maybe that's what we are looking at Manila. And apart from that, right, like the encryption is there at all layers. The second layer, the bottommost layer is on tap. I mean the storage. So what we do in on tap, right? So whenever anything you write in on tap, so that also we encrypt. But that encrypt doesn't provide you any visibility. What is it blocking? So even though I encrypt my data at on tap at that disk level, but when somebody is mounting, still you can read it. So that on-tap encryption, it is helping the customer only when somebody is stealing the disk. For example, somebody got in the premises, they steal the disk, and they try to do reading using some software, right? So only those kind of places it is serving the purpose of not able to read. So that encryption is totally different what we do in ONTAP. And maybe what maybe we are discussing here is like when the VM able to see the data, but nobody else should be able to see the data. This is like a application level encryption, right? That's what we look at. So maybe that customer wanted both. They want end to end. So they want Barbican at application level encryption, and they want Barbican at on-top level encryption. So that's what I got to know. Maybe I have some write-up. I can share that with you. But anyway, I just wanted to share that here, so that we'll be clear about the storage level backend encryption and encryption we plan at Manila. Okay, application side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in Kiran's
Mm,
proposal, that
mm,
is to control the encryption keys for that backend encryption. So
mm,
because Manila is not mounting the share and performing any encryption itself, so
mm,
he is looking to be able to create the keys and hand it off to Barbican to do the key management, such that ONTAP knows where to fetch the keys and actually
mm,
uses those keys to perform that. I think it's called DARE, data
mm.
encryption at rest, or something.
Yeah, yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, 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 right.
Yeah, so that's sort of that's the
Mhm.
mechanism he's trying to build, but he's saying that the to test this on the CI is going to be a challenge, because we would not have the similar kind of support in a first party driver. And my suggestion to him is to use the generic driver, but then I don't understand the mechanics of how we'll be able to implement it for the generic driver. So this might need some research. But on the ONTAP side, and I think you weren't in the room when he was mentioning the current, there are missing APIs, I believe, right,
Yeah,
Kiran?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
In ONTAP, right?
yeah,
Or maybe yeah, ONTAP today, ONTAP doesn't support Barbican. Okay, that's a problem.
yeah.
And yeah, we are working with product management, and we are pushing them a lot to prioritize. So that is in place. Yeah, maybe SAP also can push it. That would benefit us.
Or
Okay.
any other generic key manager.
Yeah, yeah, we support. I mean, some earlier we support some 12 key managers, but the latestly we support 4 to 5 key managers. But Barbican is not one among them. But we are discussing how to yeah, get Barbican inside ONTAP as one of the key manager. Yeah, I can provide other APIs what you want to use, right? That is yeah that is not a problem. Yeah, other key managers, but we can't do end-to-end integration with OpenStack because we rely on Barbican, right? And
No, Barbican is one of the reference implementation, but like
okay,
you can
okay,
have your own key manager as
okay.
well.
Then I can provide one. Even we have something called onboard key manager. So that is something like there is no external vendor key manager. So maybe like ONTAP itself can act like a key manager. Okay, and that is easy to do that. It will not take a lot of time. But if you want dedicated key manager, I can arrange one. Okay, we can have that setup. I can build one available, but maybe it will be there only in my premises. I don't know how you'll be able to access it, but I can arrange one. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So Sarvaran, you are saying that I can start with the NetApp implementation with the information that you have, and
But no, you okay? Gautam suggesting generic driver, right? Yeah, but I wanted to support you. So even you start a generic driver, right? But whatever we need for NetApp, that we can build it. Okay, maybe.
see, I
Uh, uh,
prefer to work on
mm,
something which will be available and kind of possible to finish early. Because if I go with the generic and it takes a lot of research and implementation gets stretched, then the whole the spec get delayed. On the other hand, if we have things ready with the NetApp, with just calling the REST APIs and the NetApp internally is able to talk with the Barbican and etc., then we'll be able to test the API and end-to-end flow easily.
NetApp with Barbican not available today. It will not even be available after 6 months. Maybe 1 year it will take. Looks like because they have to prioritize now and they have to build it, so it will take time. At least
But
six
if you
months.
check the second pull request,
Uh,
Barbican is one of the key managers.
One
So
of the
if you have
okay,
the
yeah, yeah. The
if you have
other
the
thing we can build.
reference implementation of your own key manager,
Okay, yeah,
which allows to fetch the
mm,
key and then pass to the on tap to perform the
sure.
encryption using that key, then we are
Uh,
good.
that one I can help. I can assist. Yeah, we can work together on that. Yeah, maybe Gautam also do some research, right? He was talking about that, and maybe we can, maybe after that
Yeah,
we can
maybe
conclude. Yeah,
Gautam, if
yeah, yeah.
you possibly do some research and find out the exact
Mm,
way to do this in a generic and add as a comment
mm,
on the
mm,
pull request, then that would be,
mm.
helpful to proceed in that direction as well.
Yeah, makes sense.
Anything you want on NetApp side, let me know, and I can help Gautam and Kiran. Okay, we can do that. Okay.
Sure thing. And
Yeah,
Saravanan, you said you could share some notes from your meeting.
yeah, yeah.
That would be
I
cool as
can.
well.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. Yeah.
And I'm interested in this mostly because this is starting to become user requests on even stuff like Manila CSI and so on, where Manila is not doing the encryption, but maybe allows some parameters to be plumbed in.
Mm,
Um,
yeah,
so I'll have to see how that dovetails with your proposal here.
sure. Yeah, including SAP, we have 3 customers requesting this. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome. Any other thoughts, questions, suggestions?
Nothing from me.
Great. Thank you. That was a good discussion. Yes. Thanks for helping out with this. Um, got them through like with the research and so on. Yes, it's gonna be like a big use case for everyone. So yeah, nice if we can get this done. Right. So we have like 5 minutes to the hour. We had one other topic to cover in the PTG, which is research actions tracking. I'm not sure if we have like the time to go through it. This is a topic added by Gotham. So yeah, Ken, would you like to like get take a look at this and share a bit with us, or should we take this to another meeting?
We can take it to a different meeting. So it was probably prudent though to just call out that this existed in Nova for a while, and I saw that folks were using it for different purposes, mainly observability. And so I was wondering if there was ever a use case like this for shares. And this is something that I would have asked in, let's say, an operator meetup or something. But we do have a couple of operators that operate this at scale. So if you folks think that this sort of thing could be helpful, um, probably just chime in on the Etherpad, and we can discuss this at a weekly meeting.
Awesome. Thank you. Right. So this is a wrap for PTG topics. So I'll stop the recording here. Yeah, this is the last recording. So for this PTG series, I'll post this on YouTube, but there all of the other recordings are already available. So if you've missed the discussion, please take a look at the YouTube channel. It's linked up in this Etherpad.